Hello, just give me 1 second to check my audio because I cannot hear you.
Oh, it's
Speaker.
because I was on mute. I've been talking to everybody. I've been chatting, and it just so happens that I'm on mute. So we'll be getting started in about a minute. So thanks for joining us, Jose.
No problem, anytime.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking at. I put it out. I put it out on Twitter. I put it out on. Obviously, it's out on LinkedIn and hit the different
Yep.
discords that we're associated with. So hopefully, we'll start seeing people join in just a second. So if you are joining us on LinkedIn or on YouTube, please say hello and let us know that you're there. Hopefully we'll get some. Jose, you can probably see some comments over on the right-hand side. You can actually respond to people. You should be able to enter, respond to comments if you wanted to. It'll go out to the people on YouTube. Unfortunately, they can't do that for the LinkedIn, but we can respond in here as well. So,
Great.
all right. So it looks like we're here. We're starting off. Welcome everybody. It's Friday. Once again, it's time for the Cutaway Security ICS Friday Infosec chat, where we jump on here and we just start talking about our weeks and seeing what's going on. So we're live now. We've got Oscar and Jose joining us. We'll meet them in just a second. But I want to say thank you everybody for the all of the community input. I know a lot of people aren't joining right now. We see people like Tom and other people, Wes and Dan, kind of pop in when they can. And really that's what it is. This is just for whenever you can. I'm just kind of giving this as making this a space that people can come to and chat about their weeks. Ask questions or talk about hot topics and stuff like that. So thank you for supporting this and coming back time and again, whether you're joining via YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. I really appreciate the support. So starting off like we usually do. Hello, everybody. Don C. Weber here from Cutaway Security. Want to talk about this week's activities that we did at Cutaway Security. And really, it's just been a daily grind, and that's one of the hardest things. Information security professionals, we get really excited about solving problems, being that white knight and getting out there and doing things, and it's really valuable. We feel a lot of fulfillment when we problem solve and we can get things out there, and that's great. But what wears people down is that daily grind, and we experience it here at Cutaway Security. I spent the most of my morning, when I should have been working on my projects, doing invoicing, doing expense reports, making sure that I got paid and other people got paid, and that is a part of, I don't want to hide that aspect of running your own information security consultancy, because that is actually a part of it, and it plays a big role in it. If you're working for a larger company, whether it's Mandiant or Dragos or any, Schneider Electric, as well, you do get payments, you do have, but you have your own daily grind in there about, your own clients, making sure that you're doing all of your contacts and stuff like that. So, don't be worried about the daily grind. Everybody's experiencing it, and you just need to figure out your way to get around it. Gabe, welcome, and thanks for saying hello. Tom, thanks for saying hello too. Some of the other things we're doing, my actual work this week is doing a cybersecurity document review and writing test cases. I'll be doing that for the next finishing up the first week of this, and then next week we'll be writing some of the test cases. And I think that's a really valuable thing that any vendor should do. This is actually for a vendor, and I think it's really exciting because we're taking this really old technology, reviewing what they have in their documentation, getting all the ports and protocols, talking about users and certificates, and getting that all documented, so that when they go on to a new client, and even on their old clients, they're getting asked for all of this security related information. Well, we're helping them to document that and get that in place, and it's extremely valuable in my mind. And I'm really excited to be a part of this project. It's not the most technical thing. I am writing a bunch of scripts to help automate certain things, but I'm not discovering new vulnerabilities. I'm not identifying holes in anything, but this will be the stuff that goes forward. And then the final thing for Cutaway Security, in 2 weeks, I will be in San Diego teaching another ICS 410 class. Going back to California, I haven't been there. I mean, yeah, I haven't been in there in a while, at least not down south. We'll be going where I kind of spent all my time in the Marine Corps. So, I'll be reaching out to family and maybe a few friends and spending some time with them. So that's Cutaway Security. But we're here. We're joined by Jose and Oscar. And what we'll do is we'll go and we'll highlight them, and see what's going on with them. So Jose, you joined first. So let everybody know who you are and what's going on with you this week.
Well, Jose, I'm joining, currently working on Dragos, right, as a senior industrial consultant, but I'm fairly new to OT, so I'm moving. The funny story was I went from OT to IT. I spent in IT for about 6 years and then moved to OT again when I joined Dragos a few months back.
Okay.
It's been a pretty interesting journey, moving from both sides. I can go into more details later on, but yeah, currently working in the same stuff as you. It's funny how you mentioned like all at the beginning that you had to do invoice documentation and all of that, right? And I was being a technician at the time, right? I didn't realize how much you're going to do, like those kind of things when you move to a senior role and then to a consultant role, right? The more that you progress in your career, more paperwork and more document you have to develop. And like you keep doing technical stuff, don't get me wrong, right? You keep doing like all the analysis and all of that, but with that comes with a lot of paperwork, documents, and things that are now even your top priority. Not even the things that, as you say, maybe script, right? The script is failing, but if you had documentation lacking or the client is waiting for a report, that takes up like all your time and priorities before anything else in the technical side. So that was super interesting to me when I started to move and progress on my role. But yeah, that's it's been my week. So
yeah, so yeah, onboarding with any new organization, any new organization. So first of all, congratulations. Well done. You're starting a new path is always interesting. And can be difficult. But it's always that challenge, right? You're accepting that challenge. So well done and good on you for that. You said you had an IT role for a little while. What were
yep.
you doing there?
So I was a network architect. So I developed solutions for like Fortune 500 companies and things like that. So
Okay.
I was doing, I was specialized in networking security. So basically, I was doing network firewalls, web application firewalls, develop rules, so like IDS rules, IPS rules, and things like that. And the combination between what I was previously doing was like network administration for an electrical company back in Venezuela. So those two things together, right, merge into what I'm doing currently in Dragos. I was moving from that IT technical side when I was doing networking for the electrical company, then to doing network design and network security design, and that like ties together um, uh, right now what I'm doing in Dragos.
Yeah, then the networking is so important. It plays a role, and it's actually why we do security within control networks. I keep saying this, but and I definitely say it in when I'm teaching, but I talk about this a lot. Networking, and when people ask me, okay, what should I be looking at? What should I be focusing on? I mean, that's the first question. What networking experience do you have? Because it's going to play such a huge role, and it's one of the easiest ways to reduce risk in control environments. That proper implementation.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's a little bit sad. I'll tell you a short story. When I was teaching in college, right? I was teaching for like 2 or 3 terms. I was teaching the CCNA level, like the entry level for Cisco configuration in network devices, and at the same time, network firewall. But that is in the IT and also software development path, right? So at some point you get to a certain level and then you can pick between these two paths. You go either system administrator or you go to software development. When I was teaching networking, I was really passionate about it. And I was like, look at the hackers and look at this. We're going to create firewalls and things like that. And at some point, I started to see that they don't seen too much interest in that,
Mhm.
and I asked for it, and I still remember that is still I still dream about it. I wake up in the middle of the night and say, like, I can't believe this student say that to me. But he say, like, the only problem with networking, Jose, is like network is for all people. And I was like, what are you talking about? And that kept me thinking for weeks. And I was talking with my colleagues and friends about it and going back and forward and all of that. And I get to the conclusion and I meet with my students and tell them, like, you know what, you're right. You are absolutely right. The problem with networking is like to get to that position in networking, either you have to be lucky enough, right, to get at entry level networking, but usually the people that get into a networking role pass for help desk, sysadmin, domain administrator, blah blah, and to the point when they actually reach to the networking position,
Mhm.
they are far away into the career because, as you say, it's like it's so important that they create so many barriers and rules and to avoid people getting to those positions as an entry level, right? You won't give somebody that has like couple months on experience that gate, right? Usually that's what happened. I was lucky enough to get that opportunity back in Venezuela, but I realized talking with my colleagues that usually like they are really far in the career before they can get into the networking roles, and it's because of that. Yeah.
Awesome. So Oscar,
Oh, sorry.
welcome back and good to see you. So what have you been up to, sir?
Hey, Don. Yes, I've been a while, a little bit busy, just trying to learn as much as I can.
Uh-huh.
Working with a few reviews of different industries, but most of the time trying to learn, trying to
Yeah.
see.
So what are your, I mean, I know you do architecture and I'm sure that entails a lot of different things. What would you consider has been your biggest challenge this last week besides helping Jose on board? So,
Helping Jose is a pleasure. We are pretty close friends, so that's also friend. I think he's realizing that you can keep up with all the different technologies, and every time you reach a point like, oh, and now I'm looking at this, and you name it. It could be, I don't know, whitelisting solution, could be antivirus, endpoint solutions, firewall technologies, protocol converters, you name it. Every time you say, okay, I have a basic understanding of this, I'm familiar with the technology, with the vendors. There is a new technology, a new vendor, a new push, a new trend, and you need to keep current, right? All the time you need to keep reading, looking for information. So when you are talking with your clients, with different companies, you know, okay, if they are using this, you already have like back in your mind, you already have an idea of, okay, maybe potential concerns of maybe misconfigurations, things like that. And doing that while you are doing all the work is always is hard to do. It's hard to get.
right. And yeah, the solutions that are being provided by vendors and, and implemented either by the vendors or the integrators, they're so challenging, because and it really depends on the different levels that we're talking about, the implementation, whether we're all the way down in the process, talking about the controllers and the local HMIs down there, or if we're talking about the level 3 environment and often that integration, there's so much that goes, so much complexity and so many different things that the vendors can or excuse me, that the clients can select for their implementation while they're deploying things. And, it's, I do a lot of vendor blaming, I guess is the best way to talk about it, because there's so many features in there. But I have to remember, and I have to remind myself that, hey, the vendors have built something that is useful for the clients. They don't know how they're going to use it. They don't know if it's going to go into the chemical industry or to the utility industry or natural gas. This company that I was talking to, while there are extremely focused on the electrical industry, having the discussions this week, they're like, hey, look, remember that we built this product so that it wasn't industry specific. It wasn't just for utilities. It was for anybody. And we have lots of clients that have purchased this and deployed it in different ways, at different sectors. So it's understanding those technologies, understanding, what's deployed there One of my biggest issues, though, is that the people that are installing these things, whether it's an integrator or it's the actual team that is at that company that purchased it, a lot of times they're just installing, and then they're reading the configuration guides and following it to the letter, meaning that they haven't thought about it from the outside the box like you do, Oscar, which is like, okay, it's yeah, we need to configure this to get to working, but is there a better configuration setting that we can select, or do we actually need this service? So that must be a challenge for you as well.
Yeah, no, and definitely I remember my old days as operator. I used to be process engineer, so and at the time the priority was to get things working, right? So we are not really worried about, oh yes, this is not probably the best practice, this is not the safest practices for us as operators or engineers. Okay, is working or not? Is producing water or not producing water? That's the end. Now there is another team, and now I realize that that probably is not the good approach. That should be integrated and is easier to implement when you are installing and doing the configuration. But yeah, definitely now it's like, okay, remember those days and all the things that you used to do in the past. Now you're paying for that.
Right. Yeah. And that going through this documentation that I've been doing this week, and you really read it, and all of the information's there. They describe everything that is deployed for that, deployed for that product, but you don't, a client doesn't necessarily need all of it. Sometimes there's too much information, and it's difficult to pull out those security concerns and stuff like that, from that documentation, unless it's very specifically highlighted. And so that's what we're trying to partly do this week. Yeah, Jose, did you see the question from Wes in there?
Yeah.
What are some of the things people should know, learn, or understand when networking for OT versus IT? So have you kind of noticed any differences or any areas that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I can spend 3 hours talking about it. So easy. So great question, Wes. So the first thing that I noticed when I moved from IT to OT, it was like the basics are the same. So you remember in the old school when you talk about OSI model, like all the layers of security, like all the networking layer remains the same. So if you are clear, for example, how the packets move across the network, it will be the same in the enterprise web application. It will be the same in the OT environment. Now, what is the difference is like the way, the speed that the technology move and the fancy marketing that is putting in IT is way different what is putting in OT. So I'll give you an example. You go to IT network and you see software-defined network. You see all these crazy next generation software-defined AI things, right? That is full of marketing and full of beautiful GUI and all of that. Sadly, that's not applicable for the OT. Because that communication, as Gabe said, like all the assets needs to talk with a centralizing. IT is moving more to an approach with a subscription base. For example, IT connect to a cloud management service, right? You cannot do that in OT. You don't want the switches to be connected to a cloud, exposed to the internet, and you know what I mean. So even it's encrypted next generation, whatever, it's always like military grade encryption. Is not like that's not
Right.
feasible in
Well,
OT.
you have to be in it's and I think you're going to learn pretty quickly with some of your experiences at Dragos is that and even in 62443 they recently have an update that's coming out. It's either out or it's out for comment right now. But you mentioned cloud and the connectivity and so forth. They're actually identifying, well, they want you to identify whether or not your technologies have the capability of doing it, and if they're doing it, because the newer solutions are going to have some of those components that do require that cloud connectivity. And it really, it all depends on the situation, but it's questions everybody should answer. But I think you're absolutely right. In my experiences, and I think, Gabby, it's, it mentions that there are different types of devices, when we're talking about networking. We're also really concerned about, and, Jose, you and Oscar can probably talk more about this than me, is that once you get below level 3. So level 3 is that management environment, that plant-wide network where you're going to see your management of servers, all of the supporting infrastructure. Your processes are going to most of the time be communicating back. Sometimes there's going to be control coming from level 3, but your processes are at level 2 and below. So that level 3 environment is usually your core routers, your Catalyst Cisco, or whatever normal network devices like Juniper and stuff like that you would see in your corporate environment. But once you get down at level 2 and below, once you enter that process area, that's when you're going to see network devices that are specific to a control environment, meaning that they're rugged comms, so Cisco kind of Siemens branded network devices. They're going to be, they might be developed by Juniper or by Cisco and rebranded for those different vendors, but at the same time, they're rebranded for a purpose, meaning they have limited capabilities that are designed specifically for that style of network in the control environment. So, it's I think that was Gabby's point about that. So Oscar, any input around kind of the networking down at the process level differences?
I agree with you guys, and I think Jose is spot on that the networking for IT is very similar to OT until certain point, because the closer you are to the process device, the closer you start seeing a lot of proprietary protocols, and you see, okay, they're using probably Ethernet, but now it's not the typical, or using Ethernet TCP IP, but then you are not seeing HTML, but you are using specific proprietary protocol, and sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge. Like, okay, is, I don't know, Wireshark is able to parse those protocols. Can I understand those protocols? And then also it's a little bit of fun, right? Because can you start playing and say, okay, let me start the PLC and see what the packets look like. Then we stop the PLC and look at the packet, and then let me start learning about these protocols and seeing how they play. So things to discuss.
Yes, and that's it's I do I think it's exciting, just like you're talking about, because that there is that difference, and both of you were talking about the different types of components that you see down at that level. The gateways, the media converters are probably what you would call them in the corporate environments. They're called gateways in the control environments, which is basically, it is doing that media conversion from potentially from some type of field bus protocol to some type of networking protocol, and understanding those different devices, what their capabilities are, what their role is important. The firewalls that are going in place, some people like to call them the transparent firewalls, but they are protocol specific firewalls. They might understand 2 or 3 different industrial protocols. Jose, what are your experience with some of those essentially managing all of those transparent firewalls? Have you had any experience with that?
Well, I experienced with, for example, for Palo Alto, the centralized management for Panorama is one of those, right?
Okay.
More specific to the question that Wes putting in place about Cisco dominating the OT networking, I got a little bit experience with NDA, like the network aggregation, like you can control several switches in a centralized management device. But again, it's all clear that the path that they're moving forward is to a subscription base, right? So I got a centralized management that you have to pay a certain fee every so often, that you have to update and all of that. And that's the conversation, I think, Wes is right, that is happening right now in the ICS security, because for example, what is a firewall, a next generation firewall without downloading signatures, right? Like you will have an old database with all attacks and all of that. So they have to at some point reach out to the cloud and things like that. But it's been something that I'm seeing growing also as well in the OT. IT is already full deployed because they want a centralized management for everything. The tricky part is each brand wants to have their own centralized management. And what I'm seeing is now you have the Palo Alto Panorama, you have the Cisco with the fire source of firepower. It's a firewall, but centralized management for all the firewalls there. You got the DNA. Rockwell also has their own centralized components. So I think we're getting to the point that like we have to find a way to like make everyone happy in a single.
Right. And using the vendor software is usually the easiest way of doing it. When we're talking about, oh gosh, there are a few vendors out there. It's like, it's German, Hirschman or something like that. I can't remember, but they've got their own software for managing, all of their stuff, which would be different than all the Cisco's. You can't, like the Cisco's would have to be managed separately from these, but they have their own software. I guess you could fall back to like TACAX Plus, having a central TACAX Plus. A lot of vendors will provide that, but I've never had any experience implementing that. Is that something you've done, Jose?
No, again, like it's because the risk, right? It's like you want to trying to deploy a technology in an environment that like basically requires zero downtime. It is risky to implement those solutions. Even in IT, I remember having like these SLAs are 99%, right, of the time. So when you plan out ahead, even we are afraid of doing that. Imagine now in a plant when it takes like 3 months to shut it down. So it's kind of risky to start putting like new things, especially when what you have is already working, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you would have to plan all of that if you're going to pick up something that centrally managed everything like TACAX Plus. That would actually have to go in at the beginning of the project, and since you're already deployed and running, how are you going to convert everything over? That's going to be a difficult thing to do, migrating, right?
And it's hard to convince somebody. For example, they say we already have SNMP. What I want take packets, right? Like, but you can control devices, remote, and all of that. But like, I can send an operator, and I never shown like because to be honest, how often you change a switch configuration once that is running?
Right. All they really want to know is what's the health of that switch? Is this port going? Is there a port going down or going interface that's going out, so that they can do maintenance, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think like a great portion of our customer already had that in place. They already can identify in logs like when the ports or switches are going down or things like that. That communication level is already there. So it's hard, really hard to convince a client to move to a new shining solution, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, but people are, starting to consider that, utilities are, with, all of the current state of affairs right now. It definitely, my utility clients said they're asking a lot of hard questions of the vendors, having a lot of expectation around understanding their implementations so that they can, do a lot of centralization of this. But of course, they have, because of the regulatory requirements, they've got the funding to actually implement on that. They've got the backing to push back on the clients and within their own organizations. So it's regulation is a good driver for some of these things, but that doesn't mean the challenge to those other organizations that don't have regulations, that the changes aren't getting or the justifications not being pushed in their organization. So that's kind of what I've seen. So Jose, what do you have planned for the weekend?
Not much. Trying to enjoy like the weather. Finally, we have like a winter kind of snowing storm during like at the beginning of the week. So I was like,
Are you still down in South America?
no, I'm in London, Ontario. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
living in
Oh, so
Canada
you're up
right
north.
now.
Okay, so you're in. It's still winter there. I know,
It's
Oscar,
still
you're up there
winter.
as well too.
Canada is winter until May, and then suddenly from one day to another is from minus 20 to 20 or 30. In 1 week that you will see like 40 degrees changes, and suddenly everybody is wearing shorts and flip flops.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you guys, you're killing me because I haven't been to Antarctica and I haven't been to South America. So I mean, but now the people that I know, y'all are in Canada. I've been to Canada, So, how am I going to get down? How am I going to get a gig down in South America helping out there if y'all are up here? So
Yeah, and you know what? One of the things that I had in my bucket list is going to see the Northern Lights now that I'm in Canada. So I'm hoping because we need to find a way to enjoy the winter.
it's a huge change, right? Okay, so yeah, it's
So
huge.
it's a huge change for me, especially because the place that I was living, it was in Maracaibo, which is the oil city,
Okay.
right? And it's 40-degree the whole year, 40, like even at night. So
So that's Celsius, right?
Celsius,
Because
yes.
I still
So
operate. I'm American. I
yeah, yeah,
operate
true,
in
true.
dirty Fahrenheit. So I was like,
It
man, that's freezing.
is super hot.
Yeah,
Let's just
super
say
hot, super
it's
hot.
super
Yeah,
hot. And then
and
I
it's.
moved to Canada, and it's like
I'd imagine it's very, very humid as well. So
true.
yeah,
Yep.
Oscar, how are any plans this weekend?
Not really. I'm planning to enjoy with the family.
Mm-hmm.
As
Yeah, the new baby takes a lot of that time, right?
yeah, and as also say, to enjoy the few opportunities we have to be outside without having the ton of clothes and the winter jacket. So
Absolutely, yeah, and I plan on doing the same. I'm trying to playing a little bit of catch up, but I do need to get out. I got to get out walking. I need to get outside and spend some time with the family and get actually outside myself. So I'm gonna take some time for this weekend. But hey, Oscar, Jose, thank you for joining us. And everybody, excellent conversation on the from the YouTube crowd. Didn't see anything from the LinkedIn crowd, but hopefully you'll be watching these later. So if you do have any questions, please reach out to any of us. We're all on the several discords that are associated with industrial controls, to include the Cutaway Security Discord. So we'll see you all out there. This has been another edition of the Cutaway Security. ICS Friday Infosec chat. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks again, y'all. Have a great day.
see ya.